Hey everybody, Bonehead from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Blood Bowl Formation's Old World Alliance. So we're going through every team available in Blood Bowl right now, whether it's from the rulebook, the Teams of Legend PDF, or the two expanded NAF teams, Slan and Khorne, and we're looking at how you set up your team to kick or to receive. The whole idea being the best setups give you the right options for your team. So we're going to have a look at kind of how to set them up, why to set them up that way, where to put your positionals, and why. Now, the OWA team is a very interesting team. It's probably the most interesting team in Blood Bowl at the moment. It's got loads of different positionals with positives and negatives, with animosity, with loner, but it does give you a ton of power as an option. So I drafted in Ian Triplo, Triple Power Triplo, who destroyed me with OWA on our Fumble League using the 2016 team. Bear in mind, the 2020 team is ever so slightly better now. The Dwarf got worse, but overall Loner and things like that actually got better. So, interesting team. We're going to have a look at some setups. So if you're going to be running OWA or playing against them, you'll kind of have an idea of what's going to go where and why. So as we start looking at these setups... Fucking shit. So as we start looking at these setups, there's kind of two things to consider here, and that is which big guy you're going to run. They get a choice of two big guys, the Ogre or the Tree Man. Now the Ogre performs a great role as a big guy blitzer, and as a blocker, and as a cheeky teammate thrower. The Tree Man excels at throwing and at being punched because armor 11 plus with strength 6 is absolutely massive. So there's kind of two different OWA teams based around which big guy you've got. So when it comes to this one here, we're going to start out with the Tree Anchor Defense. We'll talk through some of the positionals we've got at the moment. We've got two blitzers. Now one of them is a human blitzer. One of them is a dwarf blitzer. The human blitzer is movement 7, strength 3 block. The dwarf blitzer is movement 5, strength 3 block. So you kind of, when you're setting up your OWA team, you've got a fast side and a slow side. When it comes to this setup, it's entirely up to you which way it goes because the Tree Anchor Defense doesn't really care. It keeps your players close enough so that no matter what the speed, they've got a good range to defend. So, the Anchor. The Anchor Defense is one we use regularly with a lot of teams to kind of protect you against a team that's got more of an advantage, that you're either equal to or softer than. OWA does have a ton of punch, but if you're racking up against Lizards, Chaos, Black Orcs, Nurgle, there's going to be a ton of teams that actually can outblock you on the line of slaughter. So what we've got here is the best line you can put forward. Now, if you don't have dwarves, you can just use linemen, but that tree on the line with two linemen next door to it allows you to fulfill that requirement of 3 players on the line. We've got the halfling behind the tree there as a quick throw teammate option when it comes to your turn, but also it's going to help the tree stand up. If you don't have dwarves, it's going to be linemen, it's okay. The dwarves do not have defensive blocking skills. These dwarves are not the dwarves of old. They don't have block, they don't have tackle. They've got armbar, which is basically Mighty Blow to if your opponent falls over while leaving your tackle zone, and Brawler, which is very much an offensive skill. Now the cool thing about this setup is as time goes by, your Treeman already having strong arm means he's likely to get guard quite quickly. And guard here means the Treeman is always supporting, which means these guys here are always making 2-die blocks. And 2-die blocks with Brawler sometimes end up being 3-die blocks. And anytime you can roll a 3-die block, you've got a pretty good chance of taking somebody down. So that kind of combos well as a little group there. We've got a reserve group at the back here where we've got both our blitzers, a lineman, a thrower, and your slayer. Now that slayer in the center gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares of slayer action. So if you want to use him as your safety, you've got actually quite a large window to do so. If your opponent wants to go around and set up a side cage, there is a better defensive formation than this one, but if that's what they want to do, they want to take this opportunity, your Slayer is going to be able to crash into that cage. It might cost you a go for it or two, which can be risky, but it can be done. However, what's more likely to do is to move the Slayer over their base contact to somebody who is within 2 squares of the edge, and leave them there. use them as the support for one of your blitzers to strike because they are closer to the edge. They've got more movement. They don't have to take that frenzy. And then you are putting a Slayer and a blitzer in pressure, in contact with their side cage and probably their ball carrier. And at that point, it becomes a very good defensive maneuver. So the anchor defense is normally a little bit closer. It's normally here. You normally end up with this kind of smiley face effect of a defense. And the whole point of that is that your opponent can wipe out the line if they commit heavily to it. And with this team, they're going to have to commit heavily to it. That dwarf, maybe a reasonably easy block, maybe a reasonably easy block there, but that tree man, and that's the beauty of this halfling being in reserve, is even if someone follows up to here or here, that halfling is actually going to counter out their support. So they're going to have a strength 4, 5, 6 player there for them even to get a 1-die block. Kind of works really well as a defensive formation. Now, Ian Triplow actually said that deploying your guys a little bit wider helps 2 things. It helps funnel them inside to be striked at by the Slayer, but also it does provide a little bit better edge cover. Now, you can play the tree anchor close or you can play it slightly wider. Because the dwarf is actually only movement 5, having it a little bit wider does allow you a better range on the edge as well. So you can play it tight in these 2 squares here and here, or you can play it a little bit looser. The whole idea though is you are going to get blitzed one way or the other, but where the tackle zones fall, you are actually very well protected when it comes to being able to blitz the players that you're protecting, which generally speaking is the thrower, the halfling, and your 2 blitzers. They're going to have to come all the way around to take a blitzer out. They're going to have to clear this out to get the halfling or the thrower there. So you're protecting your investment here while having a Slayer and 2 blitzers able to react to wherever your opponent goes if they break past you. Defense number 2, please. We've got the Ogre anchor. So basically, it's a very similar setup. However, what we've done here is we've put the Ogre into the center line. It performs a very good role as a blocker. And then you kind of got an alternative option here, which is definitely worth considering with OWA. Not necessarily stacking that halfling next to the Ogre, because the Ogre is not a better blocker, but it's a worse thrower, so you may not want to go for that straight away. But by moving the Slayer into the centerpiece, what happens is you've actually got a way to counter-strike with the Slayer even faster, and it's going to stop your opponents from wanting to break through. So they're very similar. You've got exactly the same thing on both the edges. You've got the reserve here of the blitzers and the halfling. It doesn't matter. This one is a more up-close knife-fighty thing. You've got the Ogre on the line ready to start pounding. You've got the Slayer there ready to come and sweep in as well. If you're going to be going for a deep throw, so I'd probably use the tree man offense because you want to be able to clear off that line and get that halfling into the backfield to start paratrooping around. But here, actually, if you're going to be able to just swoop in on your defense, if you're going to kick it back deep and your opponent's team is going to have to spend 3 players at the backfield and then 8 up front, you're going to outnumber them, which means playing a little bit closer with the Slayer up front and that halfling protected is just going to allow you to get quicker into this bit here, and this bit here is going to be where the murder is. Alternatively, if you're running the Ogre, you can use your Ogre as your linebacker instead of your Slayer, allowing your Slayer to be your safety. So on the line, you've got 3 linemen or 2 dwarves in a lineman, whatever you can expend. You've got that same kind of Y formation there, but we have tucked it in a little bit. And the reason we've tucked it in a little bit is to drop 2 players down at the bottom here. So you've got the Slayer and the thrower deep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. It can't quite hit the sidelines, but that's never going to be the case. But if you are playing against a team that you want to drive in a certain direction, you can actually deploy your Slayer a couple of squares one side or the other and subconsciously lead them one way or t'other. If you put the Slayer and the thrower here, for example, you've got a strong side and a weak side. They're going to flit down the weak side. It's going to leave your Slayer out of place for a turn, but if it's a slower team, that's fine. You can kind of force them one way or the other. In which case, if you're going to do that, then you want to put your slower blitzer this side and your faster blitzer on the other side, away from where you're headed. So in this situation, we've got these 3 on the line. They are going to get pushed around a bit, but then you've got this guy in the backfield. And not only do you have the Ogre who's ready to blitz if you want him to, or to just wander into the carnage exactly where and when you want him, you can also go for that cheeky halfling paratroop shot with the Ogre. Now, paratrooping stunties into the backfield is a superb defensive tactic. 3++ dodge anywhere means that they can actually just walk up to and contact with the ball carrier, wherever the ball carrier is. And that's going to cost your opponent activations. And if it costs them 1 or 2 linemen to clear a halfling off a ball, that's 50k of TVOP, at least, against 30k. So you're netting that advantage. There's always the chance, though, that they're going to drop the ball because you put a tackle zone on it, and your halfling can just wander in, grab the ball, and score on the defense. It's a long shot, but it is going to be a stressor point for your opponent who's going to have to consider it. It also means they're going to have to stop taking their time. So we've got the Slayer and the thrower or a lineman, whatever, in the backfield. This guy is here to stand there while the Slayer just goes and punches things. He's your support, but it also keeps him safe at the back. Ogre and the Halfling get you your throw teammate angle, but also your Ogre can blitz if you want to. And you've got one blitzer there with a lineman. So if they clear out the line, they're going to stay the heck away from this Ogre. They might blitz away a lineman, but then you've got potential of a 2-die block with one of your blitzers, a counter blitz, with the Ogre or the other blitzer or the Slayer, depending on where you need them to go. Slayer safety, pretty flexible. It is stretched out, so if you're playing against a team that's going to get up here and just play numbers real early, it's going to mean your Slayer is actually quite far out. But against a sort of medium speed team, Chaos or something that needs to score in 3 turns, Slayer safety is going to force them into a real tough position where you've basically got an Ogre, a Halfling, a Slayer, a Thrower, a Blitzer, and a Lineman on one side that they cannot tag, basically. They can tag this side, but this one here, 6 great players coming straight down on their offense. Now we've got the Tree Chevron. Now the Chevron is a fantastic formation for slowing down faster, lighter teams. Okay, Elves, Skaven, stuff like that. What you're doing here is maximizing your tackle zones, forcing them to take a blitz, to at least take 1 blitz. Now, it's going to be a profitable blitz for them, I imagine, and that's not always going to be the case, but that's going to force them to have multiple activations, multiple resources to get that breakthrough, and you're going to be left with a flexible reserve force. So, you have got a strong side and a weak side. That's not fair. You've got a fast side and a slow side. Tree Chevron, Dwarf, Tree, Dwarf on the line. We talked about this before. The vulnerability here is that if they clear that line off, they can run straight down the middle. That isn't going to happen. You've got a tree slap bang there. They can clear out these dwarves. They can probably do that. But your tree is not going anywhere. And they're going to take a lot of supports to try and block him out. Now we've got these linemen deployed here, which means they can only get supports here. This support is going to be of no use. So they're going to struggle to gang up against a tree with strength 3 players. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, they can do it, but then they're going to be playing 5 players against your trees. And that is okay, because they're not going to be breaking through with that. So what's likely to happen is a side blitz to break through. Now this is a fast team we're up against, and their goal is going to be to collect the ball, move it up. This is also a really good defense against a turn that has to score in 2 or 3 turns. They're going to move it up, break through, create a beachhead, and then on their second turn go for it through the end zone. So what you're happy with them doing is being forced to go to the edge, because if they go to the edge, they're going to have to put a dude there as a support, a dude there to counter the lineman. Then they're going to have to blitz in here, take this blitzer out, but they're still going to be dodging through when it comes to moving the ball up. So you're forcing them to take dodges, you're forcing them to blitz, and you're putting your best combat troops on the side. Now what I said about having a fast side and a slow side is you've got a movement 5 Slayer and movement 5 Dwarf. I recommending it. Actually, I don't know what's going to be best for you in your team. I like putting humans on one side, dwarves on the other. Okay, but that means you've got a slow side versus a fast side. What might be better is Dwarf Blitzer with the Human Thrower and the Human Blitzer with the Dwarf Slayer. And what you can do is actually flip-flop these 2 positions around, have the Slayer on the edge with a Human Blitzer here to play your deep safety. It's an interesting one because actually if they go to block this guy and end up there, your Slayer can blitz anybody off the pitch. That's great fun. But if this is the Slayer and they don't take him out, he's going to end up in base contact with a blitz right on the edge. So it depends on what you're planning on trapping your players to do. If you're playing against Skaven, I would not be going for the Slayer here. So I'd probably go Slayer, Dwarf Blitzer there, Human Blitzer there, because you're going to be baiting against this Human Blitzer. The idea here is that they cannot get anywhere through because you've got these overlapping tackle zones here of these players, and there's just no way for them to punch through without having to take multiple dodges. Now, a cheeky 1 dodge on a 2+ is easy and it's almost a gimme, but no agility team is going to take 2 or more 3+ unless they are really desperate, and this defense is going to force them to take at least a couple of dodgy dodges. Now that all predicates on you putting your tree on the line to hold that gap. What if you don't have the tree? What if you have the Ogre? Well, then you've got a little bit more flexibility. You are going to bin off that line of scrimmage, put the dwarves there, put linemen there, and hope they don't go down. That funnel is going to open, but you've got the same defense on the back here, where you've got fast blitzer, slow blitzer, Slayer, for you to spread around however you think is best. It doesn't really matter. the whole point is that it's going to be forcing your opponent to go one way or another. Okay, if they're going for a fast breakthrough, they're probably going to go down the dwarf side. So having the dwarf slayer with the having the dwarf blitzer with the dwarf slayer means you're forcing them. They're going to want to break through the slower side, but the slower side's going to end up with 2 block, and one of them's got frenzy. If they break through the faster side, they've got that human blitzer who is just faster, so it forces them. But now we've got our ace in the hole. This guy could be a halfling. We've got the ogre, and if you put the ogre on your second line, you can basically put him with one of your blitzers in this little group here, but put him forward. If your opponent wants to mark the ogre so he can't do anything, what they're going to be doing is giving you a 2-die mighty blow block for free. That is fine by me. You don't even have to take it. If you're taking up a player and you don't want to activate that ogre, you don't even have to take that block. They're not going to be taking that block either, but they are probably going to be netting team value on pitch if you do that. Now the angle here is if you've got a halfling and you want to play it on defense, you can pop it there. There's going to be no way for them to blitz the halfling, and unless they give you a sacrificial victim against that ogre, watch out for like Skaven Lyman, this is what they're born to do. The ogre is going to be able to throw that teammate wherever. However, this is a defense against fast teams. They're going to be going for the breakthrough, and it's going to be on one of the angles on one of the sides here. Same as before. What it does do is it makes your opponent choose. Do I want to go the Slayer side, or do I want to go the Ogre side? There is no good choice. That's the great thing about this team. They're not cohesive. They are a very uncohesive team. But man, Slayer, Ogre, a couple of blitzers, some brawlers, it defends really well, and your opponent is going to get in a scrum, and when they get in a scrum with these guys, there's going to be big hits everywhere. Okay, offense time. We're going to go with the 5-5-1 here as our primary for the OWA setup. Now, the reason for that is twofold. 1, it works. 2, it's safe. Now, when it comes to the OWA team, they want to cage. You've got dwarves, they're slow, but they also hit really well, and they've got good armor, and you've got a choice of 2 big guys who both hit very well and have good armor, but aren't particularly fast. So your team is middle speed and middle to strong on punching. So we've got a little bit of a graphic here with an extra halfling in there so that we can kind of plan it out. But the whole point of the 5-5-1 is that you deploy 5 guys on that line, and you deploy them to win the line of scrimmage. If the ball ends up here, you want to push and roll the line that way, basically end up bookmarking it. Then you've got a team of people on either side that can either move in to secure the ball ready for your thrower to collect, or just screen. Now that's the beautiful thing about the 5-5-1, is that there is nowhere for your opponent to go without taking at least a blitz that's going to cost a few players to do so. So this protects against the blitz result on a roll, on a kickoff roll, but also if you mess something up on your very first block, it's going to be fine. Okay, before you commit, this is a very solid place to be, and if your opponent just steals the turn from you, it's going to be okay. So let's look at the line now. Now, we've gone with the Ogre on this setup here. So Ogre in the middle. Okay, the Ogre performs the role of a blocker on this team. You've got 2 blitzers and a Slayer to go running around punching who you want to punch. That Ogre is there to punch and be punched. Mighty Blow doesn't work on defense anymore, but armor 10 plus Thick Skull does. So Ogre in the middle with 2 dwarves on either side. And then you've got a great combo. So the way we've done the setup here, we've got the human thrower in the backfield with a lineman just either side of the sweet spot. We've got the catcher on the wing and a lineman opposite it. So what I'd like to do is put the catcher who's movement 8 up here, this blitzer who's movement 7 up here. This becomes your strong side because you've got more combat power this side, but you've also got the catcher, so your opponent is going to be you are going to have a scoring threat on either side. Movement 8 dodge, movement 7 block. That's a pretty great place to be. Now on the line we've got Dwarf Heavy. Slayer one side, Dwarf Blitzer the other. Now whether you want to put them on the end or on the inside is up to you. You've got 2 kind of angles there. If you deploy the Slayer inside, it gets those supports. If you deploy the Slayer on the outside, it becomes available for a blitz by blocking this guy away using the Dwarf. Using this guy as a support, it's then going to bookend that line, and your Slayer can wander off merrily. You can end up kind of tight ending those guys. You'll end up with 6 free players, and it's fantastic. Or you can just block a dude away with the Ogre and then frenzy twice with the Slayer, getting some really good hits. I like that angle too. You've got a lot of choices here. Block away, fantastic. Then block this guy down there, fantastic. Then Slayer block there, freeing up the Ogre. If you've got a halfling, what you can do is rely on this screen to buy you some time. You've got the thrower in the backfield. This guy goes away and basically becomes this halfling next door to the ogre. And you can put him down here if you want to collect the ball and you're not too fussed, or you can put him next to the ogre if you want to get that thrower to get the ball and get the ball to the halfling. This is not a great offense for a one-turn touchdown. We've got a couple of those for you next. But what this offense allows you to do is be massively flexible while winning the line of scrimmage, collecting the ball, and then giving you basically two little groups of players that can either support or go on a very profitable blitz. Now, I said OWA like to cage, so we're porting this in, I think, from is it dwarves or undead? Basically, the 5-6 box is similar to another tactic used that runs out the clock. So if you are in a good spot or you just want to bring your opponent to you, this is kind of useful against those teams that are weaker than you. So if you're going up against elves, you're going up against Skaven, you will have to prepare for them to try and crack your cage and steal the ball. But also what they're going to be doing is throwing their players at you, and your players are more resilient than theirs. You've got slayers, you've got dwarves, you've got an ogre. You are in a really good combat position, so if you can lure your opponent to you, you don't need to use your speed. So the 5-6 box drops two returners down the back here. Now, talking of returners, the second lineman involved in any one of these offenses can be that dwarf runner. If you don't have a thrower, you've got the runner instead, that's absolutely fine. Use your best practice and depending on your list. Now, what we've got here is the ogre, the dwarf, Slayer and the Dwarf Blitzer on the line, same as before. That is a very powerful combat contingent. Now, if you plan your blocks properly, what you should be able to do is get a couple of good ones there with the Slayer and a couple of good ones there with both those Dwarves without even using that Ogre. We've got one Blitzer out wide and one Catcher on the other side using that movement 7 and that movement 8 to cover all the pitch. Human and potentially the halfling midfield will allow you to collect the ball. And the whole idea here is wherever the ball goes, you can get it and bring it in and bring enough players down to form a cage. Now, ideally, you want the ball to land about here and use either the thrower or the halfling to get the ball. And then you've got dwarf, ogre, whatever, back it up here. It doesn't matter which way you go around it. You've got some really solid anchor points here. But you've got some mobile pieces. You've got 6 floating players that can cover the majority of the field. That will allow you to essentially go into a cage most of the time on turn 1 with a very dominant line as well. That's a fantastic place for you to be, because if you end up caging here, that's going to be okay, because you kind of have a staggered cage at that point with your front line. If your cage is here and you've got a little merry ball carrier, whether it's a halfling or a thrower, you finish that turn, your opponent is going to have to disengage with your front line, which is going to cost them dodges. And every time they dodge away from one of your dwarves, they risk that cheeky armbar fail, which is really good. So if they disengage and then swing around here and attack your cage, that's fine. But they're not going very far. You've got a great combat contingent there. You've at least got the blitzer there. They are going to be collapsing into you. And then you're going to have essentially 2 pockets. You're going to be basically 2 cages right next door to each other. All you have to do is move up a cage and then you can start progressing that cage up there. And what you're going to end up with basically is 10 of your players in a really good scrum. Block on the blitzer, block on the other blitzer, block on the slayer, strength 5 on the ogre. You've got a ton of great combat power here. Then you've got the thrower catcher halfling combo if you need to break out. 5-6 box. It's going to cost them turns. It's going to force your opponent to come to you. And that's a great place for you to be as OWA. I did say we'd have a 1-turn touchdown offense, so what we've got here is a map out of the biggest collection zone available for you to pick up the ball and hand it off to your halfling. First thing we should mention, we've not put the ogre on the line. If you put the ogre on the line, it gets 1 square closer. The halfling is only movement 5, so you need to ace the throw this way because you are 14 squares away from the end zone. 6 from the throw, 5 from the halfling only takes you to 11. 2 go for it only takes you to 13. So you are risking a bad throw, or even an you are basically putting all your money on a good throw in this situation. Alternatively, you can deploy the ogre further up 1 square on the line, but you're either going to take some negatives, which can result in a wildly inaccurate throw teammate, or you're going to have to clear it out first, which means you're going to have to make some blocks. So down to you and the situation, but if you need a cheeky quick score, this might be the way to do it. Human blitzer in the backfield, human catcher in the backfield, human thrower in the backfield, dwarf blitzer for that edge 3+ midfield as well to give you a short route. Linemen on the edges with their movement 6 can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and use a cheeky go for it to collect that ball. You're going to be using go for it, but what you're not going to be doing is passing, because you're going to be saving up that pass for the halfling here. All we've done is spread our team out to maximize the return zone. So each of these linemen can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares. So you actually have a pretty good collection window from all of these players to grab that ball and score. But if you don't fancy that, if you fumble, if you're wildly inaccurate and the halfling still lands it, it's not going to be able to score, you've got a dwarf, you've got a dwarf, you've got a slayer, so you should be able to cause some carnage as well. OWA are a really cool team. Now, they are a challenge. They're rated as tier 1, which is tough at TV 1000. But as the team develops, as you get a bit of guard on the go, as you're able to upgrade to block and things like that on some of your other key players, it becomes a really tough night fighting team. You've got a lot of strength access here, and I think that flies under the radar. You've got dwarves, you've got blitzers, you've got big guy times 1, and you've got that halfling angle for the cheeky breakout as well. It's a mixture of players. It's a really strange one. Playing with standard tactics is going to be okay, but you have to play as a slower team, because bringing your opponent into you where you've got slayer blocks, you've got good blocks, it's kind of like playing a softer, faster dwarf team. It's a really interesting challenge, and hopefully this helps, because it's a great team to be included in Blood Bowl. When it landed, everyone was a bit like, that's weird, but actually it's a great challenge, and it's a really interesting team to play against. It is tough, and that's great. More Blood Bowl is more better, and this guy here brings a brilliant puzzle to the game. Anyway, let me know what you think of OWA in Blood Bowl 2020. I'm a big fan. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys think as well. And I'm going to disappear. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.